soul. I said, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Wear a mask on transport and get a test before you go.
An NHS boss is encouraging people to wear masks in the office to control the annual winter flu outbreak, reminiscent of the madness of the COVID pandemic. Because everything the nanny state does, it's not about public health, it's about the state wanting to control your life. Also,
let me welcome you to this cabinet.
Following Labour's 2024 election victory, strengthening workers' rights was high on the agenda, but with more strange and tyrannical elements being revealed, has the Employment Rights Bill become an attempt to push socialist ideology? Also tonight, another free speech controversy after a primary school teacher is banned from working with children after reportedly telling a Muslim pupil that Britain is a Christian country. The case was dropped, but the incident has started another free speech debate. Are child protection laws being exploited to cancel opinions the blob doesn't like? Plus, as Christmas approaches, a NASA scientist believes he has solved the mystery of the Star of Bethlehem, which led the wise men to Jesus in the stable. The man behind the revelation will join me shortly. In contrast, the Lib Dem-run Somerset Council may make a local farmer kill her reindeer because she doesn't have a zoo licence. Is Somerset Council the modern-day Ebenezer Scrooge? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the journalist and broadcaster, Michael Crick. As always, I want to know what you think. Mailmog at gbnews.com. But now it's time for your favourite event of the day, the News Bulletin with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Jacob. Very good evening to you. It's 2 minutes past 8 here in the GB newsroom. A former Children's Commissioner who will chair the National Inquiry into Grooming Gangs has vowed to not shy away from difficult truths. Baroness Anne Longfield will stand down as a Labour peer to lead the inquiry, which was put on hold when 4 women quit the survivors panel, and the 2 leading candidates to chair the investigation pulled out. Now, in January, Sir Keir Starmer dismissed calls for a national inquiry, arguing the scandal had already been examined, before then announcing one in June. And Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has called for the Prime Minister to apologise.
When the need for a national inquiry into this was raised in January, the Prime Minister disgracefully smeared those calling for an inquiry as, quotes, far right. What the Prime Minister claimed was a far right bandwagon in January had become government policy by June. So will the Home Secretary please apologise on behalf of the Prime Minister for what he said last January?
An Afghan national has been charged with raping 2 14-year-old girls in Greater Manchester. 28-year-old Sultani Bakatash is alleged to have sexually assaulted the girls in a flat in Bolton last Saturday. Police say he had allegedly been in contact with the victims online before meeting them. The court heard Bakatash has been in the UK for 2 years and has been granted indefinite leave to remain, with his mother, 2 brothers and 2 sisters also living in the country. MI5 has been accused of impeding an inquiry into the activities of the double agent Steak Knife, who murdered for the IRA during the Troubles. Operation Canova concluded the security services helped Freddie Scappaticci evade justice from a perverse sense of loyalty. Steak Knife, who died in 2023, was linked to 14 murders and 15 abductions. The report found security services failed to act upon his intelligence time and again, with his protection prioritised over those who should have been saved. The report's author, Sir Ian Livingston, says Steak Knife committed the worst possible crimes and should be publicly named. Donald Trump has suggested the US could scale back its support for Ukraine and says Vladimir Putin holds the upper hand in peace negotiations. In an interview with Politico, the US president said weak and decaying European countries had failed to take action to end the war, claiming Europe's destroying itself through immigration. He urged Ukraine to play ball by making territorial concessions to Moscow. Well, Volodymyr Zelensky has ruled out surrendering land and is preparing to present a revised plan to the White House.
Have to play ball if they don't read agreements, potential agreements. You know, it's not easy with Russia because Russia has the upper hand. Well, he's going to have to get on the ball and start accepting things. You know, when you're losing, because you're losing, but Europe, they want to be politically correct, and it makes them weak. That's what makes them weak.
Finally, trains, flights and ferries have been cancelled as Storm Bram continues to batter the UK with winds of up to 90 miles an hour. Amber warnings with a possible danger to life have been issued for Northern Ireland and Northern Scotland. They'll remain in place until tomorrow. Thousands of people in England and Wales have been left without power, and flood warnings are in place across many parts of the country. And those are your headlines. I'll be back with more later. Now over to Jacob.
Welcome back to Save the Nation. Masks are back. Nearly 6 years since the first COVID lockdown experiment was imposed. The NHS is telling you to wear a mask in your office if you have cold or flu-like symptoms. Several schools have been put into lockdown in recent weeks as a strain of flu continues to spread, despite government officials telling schools not to go into lockdown except in extreme circumstances. Daniel Elkeels, the chief executive of NHS providers, said earlier today, you need to get back into the habit if you're coughing or sneezing, but you are not unwell enough to not go to work, or not split infinitives, you must wear a mask when you're in public spaces, including on public transport, to stop the chances of you spreading the virus to someone else. We're all very good about infection control. We're very good, well done, during COVID, and we really, really need to get back to that now. This is absolutely reminiscent of the narrative pushed by the Blob to justify locking people in their homes and wearing masks. Wearing masks arguably made no difference during COVID, as the Cochrane review showed. And with cloth masks, it may actually give people a false sense of confidence, thinking that they're not going to spread the disease, and actually increase risks as they sit closer to each other. This, again, is in reports that have been done into mask wearing. So it's not about public health. It's about the state attempting to control your life. During COVID, there were instances of the civil service using behavioural techniques, nudge theory, to persuade the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, to wear a mask in public and encourage the use of them by the public. Look at this.
To make sure that, as we've said, that you wear a mask on public transport and in shops, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I had a very nice old Etonian mask, which you can see me demonstrating now, and I sound a bit like a Dalek when I put it in, even more so than normal. I'm not going to exterminate anybody. This is the wrong way for the civil service to be using behavioural techniques on a democratically elected politician. It was completely improper, and now we're getting a similar strain of paternalism creeping back. Every winter, the NHS faces a flu outbreak. It's part of the nation's life. And while the NHS should take care of those who need it, it's the responsibility of individuals to protect their health to the best of their ability. The flu vaccine is available to those who need and want it, and it's established and effective. It's backed by years of research, development and clinical trials. So let's get back to the words of Mr. Elkeels. We were all very good. Isn't it wonderful? We were such splendid fellows. We all got a gold star from the NHS about infection control during COVID, and we really, really need to get back to that now. The reduction in COVID spread was much more to do with individuals staying at home if symptomatic and using common sense to decide whether to attend or even hold a social event. It wasn't masks. Masks are a tactic to give the impression of action whilst not making a great difference. But, as Mr. Elkield's words suggest, the blob is always keen to introduce measures that control your life, regardless of how effective it may be. We need to learn the lessons from COVID and not allow the state to impose on our lives in this way. We need to return to the habit of individuals, you and me, taking responsibility for our own decisions, not relying on the nanny state. As always, let me know what you think. mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm now joined by my most pugnacious panel, the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the journalist and broadcaster, Michael Crick. Michael, can't we let people be sensible and make decisions for themselves rather than beginning to tell them they've got to go back to masks? And aren't we learning the wrong lessons from COVID and the COVID inquiry pointing us in the wrong direction, that we need more control rather than less?
Well, I have mixed views about this. I can't make my mind up. It seems to me that if somebody can convince me that wearing a mask is going to make a significant improvement to my chances of not getting flu or a cold or COVID, yeah, I'll do it. But it seems to me the evidence is so unclear here that I would find it difficult to be persuaded at the moment. And that's what matters. If you could, there were scientific studies that showed it made a significant difference, sure, I'll go along with it. And do masks affect some viruses and not others? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. That might well be the case. In which case, they need to say that as well.
It does.
If you've got flu symptoms, I would have thought you should stay at home, actually, because you're a danger to other people.
Henry, isn't this back to the COVID mistake, that you want the government to take control of things and you want to nudge people to do things that the government thinks are a good idea? And actually, to Michael's very good point, the scientific studies don't bear out that masks are useful. Some say they may be marginally useful, some say not.
Well, it's based sort of the Betty Crocker sort of principle. I don't know if you've ever heard of this amazing thing from American marketing and product development, which is when they first developed those ready cake mixes, no one used them because no one liked them. And then they had the genius idea, what if we got someone to just crack an egg in the middle of the mix? Doesn't do anything, but suddenly they felt involved. Sales skyrocketed. And so that's what policies like this are often about. It's, as you say, it doesn't really make a difference, but everyone gets to feel that they've done their bit, right? They've got their mask on. They can see everyone else getting their mask on. It feels like you've contributed. And that is an important way of controlling crowds, as you say. I think that the big problem with something like this is that whatever you think about the way that we handled the pandemic, the whole point was that that was a crisis. That was a health crisis of a sort that comes along every 50 or so years at best. Those techniques were supposed to be an extraordinary measure. But as ever, as we see time and again when it comes to the state after wars and so on, things that are introduced as extraordinary measures, they become normal, and then all of a sudden we're wondering why we don't use them in everyday life, and every time that tide line settles a little higher. And I think that's what's happened here.
And that's really important because nobody thought of shutting down schools before COVID when there was a little bit of flu about. That's a completely novel idea, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that was probably a mistake, actually, although whether you could persuade teachers that, I don't know, because, and of course, certain viruses affect children and others don't. And in this case, COVID barely affected children so therefore it actually, with hindsight, and given all the psychological problems that seem to have ensued and the knock-on effects of those, that seems to have been a daft policy. But it may well be that the next virus is different, and we can't keep fighting each war on the basis of...
This leads back to the COVID inquiry. The COVID inquiry seems to be obsessed with the idea that we should have locked down earlier and more harshly rather than letting people get on with it, and that this fits in with that. And actually, I think that's entirely the wrong response. And when you look at the figures, death rates in Sweden, in Germany, in America, in Florida and so on, were very similar, regardless of the responses.
I agree. And what the COVID inquiry should be doing, and I think I've said this on this programme before, is preparing for the next virus that could be totally different from COVID. What is there we can do? What is the equipment that we can buy now that is likely to be useful whatever the type of virus, or the kind of clothing, what is likely to be, all of those things can be prepared for in advance. But we shouldn't assume that we apply the same rules once that virus arrives. It may well be that certain rules are different next time.
And Henry, your point's a very good one, that the state, once it takes power, is very reluctant to give it up. And it's now got these reserve powers on the books somewhere. It's got the legislation written, even if it's not currently in force. And that's quite sinister because it can be used at any time on something nothing like as serious as COVID.
I mean, I think the strange thing is that during COVID, emergency powers are fine. They're usually on the statute book somewhere. There's a Civil Contingencies Act, all kinds of terrifying stuff in there, never gets used. But actually, the strange thing during the pandemic was we had the Public Health Act, and it had all kinds of measures the government could have used, and instead it kept insisting on passing new legislation. And then the mindset shift is the bigger problem, because no British politician is sitting here thinking, gosh, I might just crack open the Civil Contingencies Act and see what I can do with it. But once you get people used to using these powers, once you've got a generation of officials who think of them as part of their arsenal, that's much harder to unlearn.
And you get this follow-on that if they don't do it and somebody gets flu, they now blame the government and they say, oh, if I'd worn a mask, I wouldn't have got it, even though there's no evidence. And therefore governments have to be seen to act because there becomes a public pressure to do something, even if something is pointless.
This is one of the reasons that we have nearly so much red tape. It's why the state is so big. It's why there's growth is so sclerotic, because so many of the regulations we have are a product of people being afraid of, well, if I don't pass this, no matter the cost, if one person dies, that person will have a campaign named after them. Martin's Law is a great example of this, right? Like, the legislation doesn't actually deal with any of the reasons that bombing took place, but nonetheless, politicians felt that they couldn't say no. The absurd bans, you might have seen this, on new build homes with their rabbit hutch windows. Why? To stop people falling out. I've actually had a look at the stats. There is no rash of people falling out of windows. British people appear generally able to handle windows. But my goodness, if you scrapped that regulation and then one person fell out of a window, it would be, did you kill this person, Minister? And that's the problem.
And therefore we need to be willing to take a certain degree of sensible risk and accept that in the winter one or two of us might get a nasty cold and it may be flu.
Yeah, and actually, on the whole, we do take that. I mean, we all know that more people die in winter, and we all know that people die of flu and they die of... And we don't have draconian rules about it. But it's interesting that you've got this exception this year, and let's hope it doesn't carry on that way. But if somebody can persuade me that if I wear a mask, I won't get flu, I'll wear one.
But if you wore a full chemical protection suit, you wouldn't get a flu. But you're not going to do that, are you?
Certainly
It's
not.
all a balance.
Yeah.
And actually, the cotton masks that we all wore during COVID are particularly useless. And it's Henry's point that it buys you into the process, makes you feel you're doing your little bit.
And I mean, remember for the first few months of COVID, we were all told we didn't have to wear masks because they weren't going to make any difference. And then somebody decided that they were going to make a difference.
Yes, on no evidence. And they'd been telling us to wash our hands the whole time, which turned out to make no difference
sing
at
Happy
all.
Birthday while you do it.
I suggested the national anthem.
And keep a distance. What was it? 6 feet?
6 feet.
Even when you're outside.
Which was utterly pointless. It was all absolute nonsense. So the lesson is, don't believe the government. Dear me, even when the Conservatives are in office. No, when we're in office, you believe every word we say. So, we've got a poll. This is really exciting. We're asking, is Britain a Christian country? And if you want to vote that we are, you can scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com, you decide. If you think that we're not, then I think you'd better switch to the BBC, because that's the channel of agnostics, atheists and other unsuitables. Anyway, in a moment, following Labour's 2024 election victory, strengthening workers' rights was high on the agenda, but with more strange and tyrannical elements being revealed, has the Employment Rights Bill become an attempt to push socialist ideology?
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
I think it's just good, honest, humble food. And yeah, as people get away from the ultra-processed stuff and get back to their roots, and what's better than a good jacket potato?
Do you know what? Sales of jacket spuds have gone through the roof. The big potatoes at Waitrose. There's been a 178% increase in people looking at recipes. And I just think it's wholesome,
it's affordable, it's comfortable, you know, it makes you feel good, it's back to basics. That, I think, at the moment, sums up the nation.
I think very much it being affordable as well, with the climate we're living in at the moment, it definitely helps knowing, you know, you're putting food on the table for a reasonable price, and people appreciate that. And it's good, honest food. You can feed your kids, and kids are seeing it on social media, and they're getting excited about it as well. So they're not like, you know, obviously everyone sees all the big brands, and now there's all these, you know, jacket potato people out there, and we're giving them something that's healthy, and they want to eat it. And I think the parents appreciate that.
And Ben, I've seen your videos. They queue around the block to get to you. If people are in the mood to cook a potato tonight, of course, we don't want to affect your sales. What is your sort of top of the pot spud recipe? Give it to us.
Oh, it's all about variety. It's picking the right potato is really important. Get a nice melody or a cara or culture or something like that. Nice and big. In the oven, if you can. Hour and 20. Get a nice crispy skin on there. Loads of butter, loads of cheese, and a nice curry on top or something. That's my go-to.
Ooh. Now, that was a final little curveball there you threw at the last minute there, Ben.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about masks, and the male mogs have come in over the airwaves. Margaret says those flimsy and usually filthy cloth masks are more of a danger to your health. Your lungs will not thank you for wearing one. A GB News viewer says masks do make a difference. Taking them on and off with contaminated hands is a brilliant way of spreading diseases. And Ashley says, mask or no mask, I think we have established that the government doesn't care for our well-being. This is all to do with control. And Tony says, masks are a sign of me being in an abusive relationship with this government, never going to wear one. Well, the thing to remember from the Second World War is that coughs and sneezes spread diseases. Keep it in your handkerchief. Anyway, after Labour's victory in the 2024 general election, the new government made it a priority to strengthen workers' rights. What has ensued has become a political football for socialists to fight over. A series of strange and damaging parts of the bill have been revealed. From possibly giving employees a week off work to mourn someone they hardly know, to employers being obliged to distribute trade union propaganda, banning fire and rehire and enforcing stricter rules around zero-hour contracts, been lauded by the left as standing up for workers. But has this become a circus show for socialists to push their ideology? Well, let me go to my panel, Henry Hill and Michael Crick. Michael, this bill does seem to have got into a bit of a muddle, doesn't it? And now it seems as if it's becoming Angela Rayner's leadership campaign bill.
Well, it's certainly taking a long time. It's a very complicated bill. It's got lots and lots of different measures in it, and overall it's a jolly good thing. And it's a jolly good thing, for instance, that employees should be informed about the possibility. I mean, you talk about it being trade union propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, you believe in people being informed. You believe in freedom of expression, freedom of information.
Yeah, but I think
perfectly right that workers in a company should be told about the possibility of joining a union. There are a lot of workers, I suspect, in this country who don't even know what a trade union is.
Well, that's the failure of the trade unions. It's not up to the employer.
It helped. And actually, there are a lot of employers who rather like having a trade union. Furthermore,
maybe they can tell
a trade union, I mean, if you take something like the care sector, where there are a lot of very bad private employers, I think even you might admit that from time to time, it's right that when workers want to blow the whistle and are frightened of doing so because they're frightened of losing their jobs, when they want to blow the whistle about violence in care homes or under provision of food or understaffing, that it's right that they should feel they can complain to the necessary authorities with the backing of a trade union behind them.
But they can complain on whistleblowing And if they're fired for whistleblowing, they can get unlimited damages. Whistleblowing is already heavily protected. But if people want to join a union, yes, of course, it's a free country.
But a lot of people don't know about unions, and this is another way to inform them.
They can find out. I mean, this
When you say they can find out, when a worker's been working 12-hour shifts and is utterly exhausted, do you think they're going to go along to the library to look at all the organisations they might join?
It is on the internet.
Sorry?
It is on the internet.
Well, not everybody uses the internet. After a long day,
That's a very specific category of worker we're talking about now.
Well, I think that why not have everybody joining a trade union? Why are you so frightened of unions?
You want the closed shop? Bring back the closed shop. So Michael wants the closed shop back.
Sorry, everybody being told that they can join a trade union.
But the trade unions can do it.
What?
If the trade unions are too lazy to tell people that they can join a union, it's not my job to do it.
The trade unions are not big enough to cover all the employees right now.
They easily could. They're just lazy.
They're not lazy. They work incredibly hard for their members.
Actually, giving employees more rights just stops jobs.
So yeah, I mean, I've been a member of 3 trade unions, to be clear. I'm not anti-trade union. I think private sector trade unions are broadly fine because Margaret Thatcher's legislation fixed the big problems that we have with the public sector unions, mass strikes, political pay, and so on. But yes, I think the baffling thing about this government is that it came in and it said, our number one priority is growth. For the perfectly understandable reason that growth is the only thing that would make all its difficult problems go away because it would bring in tax revenue and allow it to go back to spending money. And yet it's wedded to this piece of legislation at a point when Britain already has quite sort of high and sticky unemployment. And it's also bringing in things like another hike in the minimum wage, which has got even the Institute for Fiscal Studies pleading with them to stop. And it is going to gum up jobs. And the problem with an awful lot of these powers is, yes, some of them can be used responsibly. Of course they can. But the way that an awful lot of this tends to pan out, not just in this realm, but in many, is that the really, really bad employers who really victimise, who have the really isolated workers, they'll find ways to avoid this, but it will be small businesses at the margins. And I think that's one of the things about this. It's applying all of these. There's no cut-off. It's applying all of these rules to even to really small businesses where actually a small change in overheads can be life or death.
But isn't this a really important point? That if we have a problem with bad employers, they're probably people who are employing people in this country illegally, not paying the minimum wage, not giving minimum conditions. This type of legislation...
No, there are a lot of employers who are paying the minimum wage, but who are not running their care homes, for example, properly in terms of, they're spending £4 a day on food for a resident whose families are paying £1,500 a month.
This is a failure of the caste system, which may or may not exist.
Well, yes, but if you have a unionised workforce, then they will help,
as I mentioned before,
bring about fairness for the residents in that care home as well as for the people who work there, often on minimum wage.
There are existing protections for whistleblowing. There's a very well established. There's the Care Quality Commission that investigates these people who these things can be reported to.
Again, people may not know about the protections for whistleblowing. I suspect if you stood outside a care home and asked the workers, can you tell us about the provisions for whistleblowing? A lot of them wouldn't know what whistleblowing meant. Whereas if they joined a union, their union would tell them about these provisions for whistleblowing.
Because their union a moment ago was too lazy to tell them the union exists.
Well, you said it was lazy. I don't think that's true that unions...
But why don't they know they can join it?
You get this... You don't really know anything about trade unions, do you?
I know enough about them.
You haven't got a clue about trade unions. Trade unions do not spend most of their time in strikes. Trade unions work really hard.
But it's perfectly reasonable for them to spend time recruiting members.
Sorry?
They should
recruiting
members. That's up to them.
Well, it should be one part of their job.
But why should employers
spend vast amounts of time doing it? Because their main point of being them is to help their members.
It's like saying that when you get your electoral registration documents, it should have a note with it saying you can join a political party.
Well, if you're going to make analogies like that, why don't you just say, well, if you want to vote, you apply to vote then. We won't give out electoral registration documents anymore.
I'm not against that. Historically, political parties used to
Well, you'd have a lot fewer people on the voting register and a lot fewer people voting.
But actually, historically, that was the case, that political parties' job was to get people to register. It's perfectly reasonable to expect people to do things.
Well, that leads to all sorts of corrupt practices. You're not really advocating we go back to that, are you?
It doesn't lead to corrupt practices.
If it's organised by the state, people sign up to...
The thing that leads to corrupt practices is postal voting, but that isn't really the subject at hand.
Also, what happens with corrupt practices, as we saw in the Birmingham case 20 years ago, is if you allow political parties to go around signing up voters.
But they were signing up postal voters, and then they were harvesting the postal votes.
Well, you can sign up non-postal voters as well.
You can't, because personation is so difficult.
That's true, but
He's agreed with me for a moment. So can we get back to the Employment Rights Bill? Because I am interested in this being Angela Rayner's way of sort of making herself the most likely candidate to take over from Starmer, that she's playing this quite cleverly.
Oh, she is. I mean, she was already probably the single most dangerous threat to Starmer before she departed the shadow cabinet. Not the shadow cabinet, sorry.
The real cabinet,
old habits die hard, the cabinet. And she is also seen, because we've now seen time and again, that this government, despite its enormous majority, despite the fact that it only won last year, is in hock to the backbenchers. They're the most effective opposition in Parliament.
And so the unions,
and the unions, which pay most of its bills. And so if this becomes another way to illustrate that you're the darling of the left. We saw that Lucy Powell winning the deputy leadership. That is going to be another danger to Starmer, and that means that he can't resist it. And that means that all these employers coming in and saying, good God, man, have you seen what's happened to the economy? You said you wanted growth. Growth's what's going to bring spending back. You want spending. But he's trapped because Labour MPs are fundamentally unwilling to accept the trade-offs required to deliver growth.
And do you think that if Angela Rayner got the leadership, that would be harder or easier for the broad right?
I think that it would be great karma in Angela Rayner getting the job of Prime Minister, and indeed anyone who wants it at the moment getting it, because they will be utterly destroyed by it, the way that Sir Keir Starmer is. Because there is essentially no way to govern this country at the moment without becoming incredibly unpopular very quickly. The only question is whether you generate that unpopularity doing important things or not. And I suspect that what we get with Rayner is we'd get a doubling down on this kind of what we're seeing from the current government, zero growth strategy, and then no spending.
All right. Well, thank you very much to my panel. Oh, come all you faithful viewers. On Saturday the 13th of December, in the bleak midwinter, you're invited to join us for our Carols by Candlelight concert. I will be doing reading. Oh, come, apply for tickets by scanning the QR code on screen right now or by going to gbnews.com/carols. The concert will be broadcast with shepherds watching on Christmas Eve. As shepherds watched the box by night, or tuned to BBC, the angel of the Lord came down and switched, of course, to GB News. In a moment, another free speech controversy after a primary school teacher is banned from working with children after reportedly telling a Muslim pupil that Britain is a Christian country. Are child protection laws being exploited to cancel opinions the blob doesn't like?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
It's not just the UK seeing some unsettled weather at the moment. It's also been unsettled for much of the week in Cyprus. That continues into Wednesday. And the trailing weather front from Storm Bram brings thicker cloud and some showery rain into the Canary Islands, as well as much of Iberia. This is a slow-moving weather front, so thicker cloud and some outbreaks of showery rain for much of Spain through Wednesday into Thursday. A lot of fine weather through central parts of the Med, particularly Italy, and above average temperatures for the time of year. Plenty of sunny spells.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Although the storm will be clearing slowly overnight, we're still likely to see further problems from the strength of the wind across parts of Scotland in particular, where we have Met Office warnings in place. There is Storm Bram. It's going to kind of hang around as it drifts to the north of Scotland. Look at those isobars really squeezing together. The winds at the moment probably reaching their peak across parts of western Scotland. Gusts of 70, 80 miles an hour. Some exposed locations maybe 90 miles an hour. Those kind of winds are likely to cause some damage, certainly travel disruption, power issues too. Further south, the weather's, well, a bit calmer. Still quite a windy night, but with lengthy clear spells. Temperatures holding up at 8 to 10 Celsius. Bright, blustery day for many on Wednesday. Plenty of showers coming into England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Lots of showers across Scotland. And although the winds will ease a little, still dangerous gusts likely across the far north of Scotland well into Wednesday. Right across Scotland, still got Met Office yellow warnings in place for most of tomorrow. For Northern Ireland, again, not as windy as this afternoon, but still pretty blustery with quite a few showers coming in. For England and Wales, the showers will be zipping through on a brisk wind, and there will be some decent spells of sunshine here. But as I said, still got Met Office warnings in place across a good part of Scotland for most of the day because of those winds. They could still be up to 70, perhaps 80 miles an hour in exposed parts of the north and the west. Plenty of showers moving through also. The showers further south should tend to ease ease away, quite a bit of afternoon sunshine. Temperatures still above average for the time of year, but not as mild as it is out there today. For Thursday, the weather continues to calm down somewhat. Still quite windy around western coast, and there will be this weather front bringing further rain to Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But much of England and Wales looking dry on Thursday, albeit with fairly cloudy skies. And again, still relatively mild with temperatures for most in double figures. Do keep up to date with those Met Office weather warnings on the Met Office website.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, we've just been talking about workers' rights, and the mail mogs have come in by telegram. Samuel says, the problem is no one on the Labour front bench, or probably backbenches, has any idea how to run a business. No wonder their legislation is falling apart when faced with reality. And Bruce says there are several issues with the employment rights bills, but the current requirement of waiting 2 years for protection from unfair dismissal is far too extreme, just as a day one entitlement would be. Both positions sit at opposite ends of the spectrum. 6-month qualifying period would be a long overdue and fair compromise. Bruce, I think 2 years is fine, actually, but there we go. David says the workers' right bill is an embarrassing, absurd joke. These ever-increasing layers of workers' rights are the very reason productivity and growth are dismal. Give employers freedom to hire and fire to their needs. Productivity will improve and the economy will grow. I think that's basically right. Another free speech row has reached the headlines this week as a primary school teacher in London is banned from working with children after reportedly telling a Muslim pupil that Britain is a Christian country. Following the exchange, Jamie Michaels was suspended, investigated by the police and referred to child safeguarding authorities. However, the police inquiry was soon dropped and the ban was successfully appealed against. The case has caused outrage amongst free speech campaigners who are arguing that child protection laws are increasingly being used to punish views the blob doesn't approve of, rather than protecting children from harm. Well, I'm joined now by the lawyer at the Christian Legal Centre, Michael Phillips, along, of course, with half of my pugnacious panel, Michael Crick. Yes. Michael, thank you for coming in. Okay. So, what happened in this case? What was said? What was the response to it? And where did the complaint come from?
It seems as though the complaint came from some disgruntled students. This was not an Islamic school. This was just a normal state school. And there was a complaint because this particular teacher accosted them for washing their feet in the toilets. Part of the Islamic ritual before you pray is to engage in foot and hand washing. And there was a discussion that took place following this particular interaction. And he then made the point that this country still is ostensibly a Christian country. They took offence at that, and a complaint was made, and he was then banned, albeit it was overturned, from working with children as a result.
Okay. Was he being a little bit officious in stopping them washing their feet as part of their religious observance? Was that something he had in his job to do, or was he just being slightly interfering?
Well, that may well be the case, but ultimately to be banned from working with children as a result of having a conversation with them, just simply telling them the truth about the fact that this country has a Christian heritage, our laws are based upon biblical precedent, and the king is also not just the head of the state, but he's also the person who's meant to be the governor of the Church of England. So in those circumstances, he was only just pointing out what was fact, and he may have caused offence, but so what? In those circumstances, that is what freedom of speech is.
It's not illegal to offend people.
It is not an offence to offend.
And it's not an offence to offend when you're actually telling the truth, because we have an established church.
Yes.
The Prime Minister still appoints bishops. a lot of clergymen are appointed on the recommendation of the Lord Chancellor.
Yes.
It is intimately woven into our political system.
It is absolutely, and if you open up any legal book, you will find what is set out in the Bible, set out in our laws. You can trace it all back, even probably as far back as Alfred the Great, and that is the basis of our law. That is the basis of our democracy, and that is the basis of our free speech. Free speech is actually a very peculiar animal, which only really exists in countries which have a Christian heritage. And when you get rid of Christianity, unfortunately, you also get rid of free speech. And that is what we're beginning to see in this country.
And so what actually happened? He was arrested. Was this one of those 6 police turn up, or was it a more low-key arrest?
No, I don't think he was arrested, but I think he was referred to a local safeguarding panel.
OK.
And so safeguarding is one of those things which has been weaponised, unfortunately, in the last 5 to 10 years. And I've seen an increasing number of people being told that they're a safeguarding risk. And really what that means is that it's not so much hate speech, but speech that I hate. And people are told that they're a safeguarding risk because they talk about the virtues of traditional marriage, or they criticise another religion, and as a result, they're referred to not to a court, but to some anonymous tribunal who inevitably will find against them, and then they're told, well, that's it. We've had teachers and we've seen nurses all referred to these kind of quasi-judicial bodies. And
Jamie Michaels was then banned from teaching.
Yes.
And then had to appeal against it, and that's where you came in to help with the appeal.
Yes, so just to make clear, it's not actually, I'm not acting for him, but I've acted in similar
cases.
Yes, no, but that is what's happened. And as I understand it, he is now seeking compensation as a result of what has happened to him.
And does he still have a job? Has he been put back in his job, or is he still out of his job?
I think that he's working in another school, but certainly not in this school.
And in your experience, how common are things like this? Is he one case a year? Is it a case every week? What numbers are you dealing with?
Well, for example, the Christian Legal Centre has 1,000 case inquiries every year. And apparently there's 13,000 arrests or police investigations concerning online offences which happen every year. So this is an increasing problem. You know, organisations such as the Christian Legal Centre didn't have to exist 15 years ago because it just didn't happen. But now what we're seeing is an increasing number of people losing their jobs, being arrested, each and every day, I'm afraid.
Michael, how do we encourage people to live sensibly with each other? Because actually it seems to me it would be better to have let the people wash their feet, and it would have been better not to have sacked this man.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, on the washing of the feet, if people regularly wash their feet in wash basins in a lavatory, it's going to cause a lot of mess. And it's actually quite dangerous if they stand up in... I don't know the details. And that's the problem about this case. We can't know. We've only got one version of the details, what Michael says and what the Daily Telegraph says. Did Mr Michaels belong to a trade union?
That was the last discussion.
I know. Well, yes, but if he belonged to a trade union... Then the trade union should be fighting a case like this, not the Christian Legal Centre.
Well, the problem is trade unions...
Protecting his job,
Trade unions have systematically failed persons such as Mr Michaels. And in fact, that's the very reason why the Darlington Nurses Union was created. So the Darlington Nurses Union was created to help a number of nurses in the north of England in Darlington who...
and that's another trade union.
Well, they created their own trade union.
Well,
because of failure...
Because trade unions weren't helping.
Because their own trade union didn't actually help them.
If they have stronger laws to help people who are unfairly dismissed or unfairly disciplined like this, that is, you know, it's another example of why we need stronger labour laws in this country.
Because the trade unions... The trade unions are part of the woke blob. They go along with all this. They're not standing up for Christians.
Well, all this woke blob business.
They're
not doing their job properly. Sure, then other trade unions should emerge that do their job properly. But one of the virtues of trade unions. I mean, I belong to a trade union. They helped me twice in my long career as an employee. And it seems to me that Mr Michaels and your other clients should at least be trying to get redress through trade unions.
Well, in fact, there's been another trade union formed called the National Christian Trade Union, because trade unions are ideologically against these kinds of issues.
Why does it have to be a Christian trade union rather than a national religious trade union?
Because they've been kicked out. That's the problem.
Well, thank you very much to both my Michaels. And you'll be glad to know, can we have a roll of drums, at least metaphorically speaking, because the You Decide poll is in. We asked, is Britain a Christian country? And I'm glad to say that 94% of the people got the answer right, and they said yes. 6% got the answer wrong. So 94% deserve a gold star in the run-up to Christmas and a chocolate in their advent calendar. You can still vote if you want to, but I'm not going to read out another vote. It's on the QR code and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, in a moment, we are going to be discussing Christmas because a NASA scientist believes he has solved the mystery of the Star of Bethlehem, which led the wise men to Jesus in the stable. The man behind the revelation joins me. Also, if we've got time, what dark magic has been inflicted on literature students at the University of Glasgow? Thank you very much.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
The greatest story ever told tells us how 3 wise men followed a star to Bethlehem, leading them to the newborn Lord Jesus. Today we learn that a scientist at NASA believes a near-Earth comet may have been the moving star that guided the 3 kings. I'm really delighted to be joined from NASA by the man behind the discovery, planetary scientist Mark Matney. Mark, thank you so much for joining me. Could you explain, in layman's terms, so that even I could understand, what it is that you've discovered and what is a near-Earth comet?
So what I've discovered is that a comet that was observed by the Chinese in 5 BC I put together the information from their observation to come up with an orbit that would take this particular comet very, very close to the Earth. And as it passed the Earth, probably about the distance to the moon, a position on the rotating Earth would have seen that comet pause for a period of hours over a location. We have the same thing now with the geosynchronous satellite. If you stand at the equator, there are geosynchronous satellites that stay over your head 24/7.
OK, so it appears to be stationary because both it and the Earth are moving, and you don't notice the movement of the Earth, and therefore you don't notice its movement.
Right.
And therefore it could have been hovering over Bethlehem.
Correct. And the orbit I came up with would have stayed that way for several hours. So it turns out that the story in the book of Matthew that describes the Magi's journey, before they came to Jerusalem, it just says they saw the star. But when they traveled from Jerusalem south to Bethlehem, it says it went before them until it stood over the place where the child was. And objects in the sky typically rise in the east and set in the west due to the Earth's rotation, the stars, the sun and the moon, the planets. But if an object, like I said, was close enough to the Earth and traveling at the right direction, it could have paused for a period of hours. And these being trained astronomers, they would have noticed something that this was very unusual.
So they would have noticed something unusual, and it would have been moving to start with. It's only when you've got the speeds at exactly the right pace together that it appears to hover. Is that right?
Correct. And the orbit I came up with, the star would appear a little bit west of south as they were leaving on the morning of June 8th, is where the orbit says. And as they walked from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, it would have maintained the same azimuth, which is the east-west, north-south direction, so a little bit west of south. And as they walked, it would have gotten higher and higher in the sky until they arrived in Bethlehem, and it would have paused almost directly overhead. The other thing was, when I did the orbit, it turned out it was during the daytime, which had always bugged me. Our Christmas cards have the Magi traveling at night. But people in the ancient world typically didn't travel at night because they didn't have street lights. There were robbers, the road construction, I don't know what all. But this comet was so close to the Earth that it would have had the brightness of like a first quarter or full moon. So it would have been clearly visible in the daylight.
So it would have been easy for them to follow. And how quickly would they have had to have travelled? Could they have travelled fast enough to keep up with it?
Well, it would have been a direction. So it turns out it takes 2 or 3 hours to walk from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. It's a relatively short distance. And that's the period of time where it behaved like this for those few hours. So there was the time available. Now, of course, their trip from the east, it would have taken many weeks. And the Chinese said the comet was visible in the constellation Capricorn for more than 70 days. And it's that appearance in one constellation for an extended period. Pilots know this. If you see an object in the sky while you're flying a plane and it's not moving left, right, or up, down, it's actually on a collision course, or nearly so, with you. So the comet was heading more or less directly towards the Earth until, at least in my theory, they arrived in Jerusalem and walked that distance from Jerusalem to Bethlehem.
And some comets, like Halley's Comet, come back on a set pattern. Is this a comet that's likely to come back, or will it have gone on forever?
Well, two possibilities. I assume that it was what's called an Oort cloud comet, which has had very, very long periods, can be thousands or tens of thousands or even more years. But this one appeared to be, at least the orbit I came up with, appeared to be what's called a sun grazer, which means it comes very, very close to the sun, and it likely disintegrated when it got so close to the sun.
All right. Well, thank you for explaining this. I find it absolutely fascinating that so many of the things in the Bible turn out to have truth behind them. So thank you for telling everyone about it and bringing your expertise to bear and joining GB News. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, a story that will make you wonder if you've been hit with a confundus charm. In a stupefying move, staff at the University of Glasgow have cast the unforgivable curse of trigger warnings on Harry Potter books over what they call outdated attitudes, abuse and language. It seems the university has cast obliviate on common sense, and perhaps it's time to avada kedavra the woke nonsense that has our institutions under the imperious curse. And I think my children would have understood that a good deal better than I did. Anyway, that's all from me. Up next, it's the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, are you following a star over to Paddington?
Well, yes. I'm still in search of the three wise men, though, Jacob, although I think maybe you're one of them. But anyway, right, look, loads on tonight. So I've been doing a bit of digging into this new hard left group that is promising to wreak havoc on all of our lives in the coming months. So I found out a bit about them. I think the other big story, though, really, is another letdown for the Pakistani rape gang survivors and victims. Not only has this government now put a Labour peer in charge of this inquiry, they also appear to have been done away with a victims and survivors panel. So we're going to be talking about all of that, and apparently Labour MPs have voted to rejoin a customs union. So more on that as we get it.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Although the storm will be clearing slowly overnight, we're still likely to see further problems from the strength of the wind across parts of Scotland in particular, where we have Met Office warnings in place. There is Storm Bram. It's going to kind of hang around as it drifts to the north of Scotland. Look at those isobars really squeezing together. The winds at the moment probably reaching their peak across parts of western Scotland. Gusts of 70, 80 miles an hour. Some exposed locations, maybe 90 miles an hour. Those kind of winds are likely to cause some damage, certainly travel disruption, power issues too. Further south, the weather's, well, a bit calmer. Still quite a windy night, but with lengthy clear spells. Temperatures holding up at 8 to 10 Celsius. Bright, blustery day for many on Wednesday. Plenty of showers coming into England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Lots of showers across Scotland. And although the winds will ease a little, still dangerous gusts likely across the far north of Scotland well into Wednesday. Right across Scotland, still got Met Office yellow warnings in place for most of tomorrow. For Northern Ireland, again, not as windy as this afternoon, but still pretty blustery with quite a few showers coming in. For England and Wales, the showers will be zipping through on a brisk wind, and there will be some decent spells of sunshine here. But as I said, still got Met Office warnings in place across a good part of Scotland for most of the day because of those winds. They could still be up to 70, perhaps 80 miles an hour in exposed parts of the north and the west. Plenty of showers moving through also. The showers further south should tend to ease away. Quite a bit of afternoon sunshine. Temperatures still above average for the time of year, but not as mild as it is out there today. For Thursday, the weather continues to calm down somewhat. Still quite windy around western coast, and there will be this weather front bringing further rain to Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But much of England and Wales looking dry on Thursday, albeit with fairly cloudy skies. And again, still relatively mild with temperatures for most in double figures. Do keep up to date with those Met Office weather warnings on the Met Office website.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to become our biggest cash prize winner to date. £85,000 in totally tax-free cash could be making its way from our bank account to yours. It would be like having over £7,000 per month extra to play with each month for a whole year. That could be you, safe in the knowledge that 2026 is on us. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful.